without, making a huge generalization, I think women are able to read a situation generally better and more sensitively than, maybe some of their male counterparts. And that is certainly not across the board. It's just, in my experience, that's been, when it's been a particularly difficult scene or an actor's having a particularly difficult time, I think a female, and I don't mean not even just directors, even in the production crew, it's the women that end up being, able to support that person or support the situation. So I think, yes, I think women have a more sensitive approach to managing people, and I think that is definitely a huge strength on a film set, which can be so hard and so everybody's so tired and so pressured. And I think being sensitive and listening is a really big deal, and I think that doesn't always happen on a male-driven set. I recently worked with Patty Jenkins, who is directing Wonder Woman, and although I didn't see the project through, of course, and I just worked with her for a week, she just had a fabulous way on the set. She was enthusiastic, she listened to everybody, she asked opinions of not just the actors but of the crew. She just had a really fabulous way of reading the situation, being enthusiastic and listening to people, and I think that was not something that I always witness. And I think I think that would be my most recent experience of a female director, really being able to create such a great working environment for everybody. My tip to someone, and I've been very lucky to be on so many sets and work with so many actors, and I think because I have worked with so many actors and my job is mostly supporting the cast and having that, you can't not listen to them. You have to listen to your cast. You have to spend that time to make sure that you're on a similar page, because they do need nurturing and they do need support, and they need to be heard, and you need to have a dialogue with them. So, and I understand that because I've been on so many sets and dealt with so many actors, that's not intimidating for me. But it may be if you're just starting out. So maybe take an acting course, maybe spend some time with actors, talking to people who have dealt with actors, because it's it's a very raw and vulnerable position that they're putting themselves in. And sure, there's ego and whatever, but generally they need a conversation with you, and they're looking for guidance from you. So I think actors can be intimidating, but don't be afraid of that. Listen to them, because they want to be heard. And swing by the trailer in the morning and say hello. Just all that stuff is going to only add up to being a better experience, I think, on the floor that day. I think actors love working with certain directors, and that, and they collaborate, and that's why they make a film. I mean, I just did Jason Bourne, and that's Matt and Paul together again, and he wouldn't have done it without Paul, and Paul wouldn't have done it without Matt. So it's kind of, yes, those relationships are really important. Can it affect being hired again? Yeah, if the actor has that kind of, if they're that far up the food chain, then yes, it can affect it. They're people, and they're usually quite sensitive, or, they need nurturing as well. So I think it's not so bad being a first-time director, because sometimes a director who has a load of experience comes with an ego and can also be terrifying for an A-lister. Or they've taken the role because of a director, and then they're like, that's not the kind of person I usually deal with. Or this is not the kind of film that I normally do. So I think they're all people, and it is scary, or not scary, but it is different to be the first-time director working with an A-lister, but they were there too, and they know that. And all my conversations with actors has always been that. You know, like, they love that freshness. They love that you love them, which is it, right? I mean, if you're like a first-time director and you've asked this huge actor to be in your film, I mean, you're doing it because you admire them, and that's a great place to start for them, you know. So I think, yeah, of course it can be intimidating, but it can also work very much in your favor. I've worked with so many different types of directors, and I think some come to work, you know, ridiculously prepared, and and everybody knows what they're doing, and they've got a plan, and that's fantastic, and it really helps my world. But I've also worked with directors, you know, who want everything there, and then they create from that. And I just worked on a film with Paul Greengrass, and that's exactly what he did. You know, he let everybody create there and then, and it was a fabulous environment because it was a very, very collaborative environment for the cast and for the crew and for the creatives. And for me, I'm not a creative, but it was a great environment to be involved in. In terms of being organised, I think it's really good to be prepared and to know your text and to know where you're going. But I think be ready to change, and don't get stuck on that. Because we've all read scripts, and then you've shot something that's completely different, and then you've watched something that's ended up being completely different. You know, everybody's a creative. You know, don't get stuck on what you think is going to happen that day, because it won't. You know, you're painting a picture, and you've got all these different colours, and everybody's going to have a go at it. So I think being prepared is excellent. Knowing, visiting the set, talking to the cast, knowing the text is wonderful, but be prepared to change, and I think your designers will have an idea of, and you should listen, because chances are they'll have an idea that's fabulous, and I think you got to be careful not to get too narrow-minded. Narrow-minded is the wrong word, but too focused, because if you're too focused, you won't let everything in. I had always believed in this kind of idea of blocking, and Paul Greengrass doesn't block. He blocks on the day, and we're ready, and then we shoot. And there's a great spontaneity in that. And so I think, depending on the subject, you can't wing a stunt. You can't wing anything that's going to be that's going to be dangerous. You can't do that. We need to know what you're going to do. But a scene that's an argument or a heated situation or a sensitive moment, sometimes it's better just to open it up and let the actors do what they do. Don't overthink it, don't overtalk it. Again, I think it's important that you have spoken to the cast so that it's not completely raw, because you could waste a lot of time on the set. But maybe you've gone to visit them in their trailers and you've had a dialogue, and then you're going to open it up. So I don't think you always have to come to work with a shot list. I think sometimes, unfortunately, when you do come to work with a shot list, that could not work for you, because then it plays out differently, and then it might throw you. So take a feel for it on the day, take a feel for it on the project. I think it really does depend on what you're shooting that day. I've been fortunate enough to do big scale TV, so I did Game of Thrones and I did The Pacific. And I think what I noticed though is that those directors came to work so prepared. And I was thinking about what if you have never, how should you start? And sure, people start with short films and commercials, and people start all over the place. But television, you have such a short amount of time to prep. and you have barely no rehearsal time, and you have so much to do in so little time. And I think that's a really good environment to hone your skills and to, and also because the cast kind of know their characters. So you sort of don't have to do everything. And you're kind of like, I think, you'll have a showrunner or someone like that who's also has their view and opinion. And that stuff is really hard too, because of course that's how you have to make this show, but, or make this episode. But it feels like a really good environment to work fast, to be prepared, to come to work knowing your stuff. So I think if you can cut your teeth on television, then I think you'll be fine in a features environment where you have got that luxury of a bit more time, and you do have, you are seeing the set for the first time, whereas on a TV show you may, that set's well established. So you don't have to come up with everything.